happen in the future. Let's look at an example of that we're all familiar with. This is Moneyball. And Moneyball is a book by Michael Lewis about the Oakland Athletics. Many of you have probably read the book, and hopefully many more of you have seen the movie. It's a very interesting movie, and interestingly enough, Moneyball is about analytics. Moneyball describes the true story of Oakland A's general manager Billy Beane and his computer whiz Peter Brand. The Oakland A's were competing with the Yankees, and the A's had very little money to spend on players, and they needed to use their money wisely if they were going to compete against higher funded teams. That led Beane to think we need to think differently. We need to think about getting the best players, and the best players to us is going to mean the players that help us win. And so what they did was they had a significantly different approach than other people, and they decided to start choosing people that got on base at a higher percentage. So they didn't concentrate on the batting average, they concentrated on the on-base average. So let's look at how we transition from baseball to business development. So in the left-hand column here, we have the New York Yankees. The Yankees had an established player selection process, seasoned scouts that would go around and pick the right set of players. They were resource rich, and they clearly had a win rate above their peers. Enter the Oakland A's. The Oakland A's had an established player selection process. They were resource poor, and they had a win rate below their peers. This is where Billy Beane comes in. And basically he said, hey, look, we just can't continue the past. If we continue the past, we're going to continue to be below our peers. So what can we do to change the game? What can we do to think differently and act differently? And he said, well, let's just think about how we can score more runs. And the way they started to think about that was to get people on base more. To get people on base more meant they had to have a different type of players. So Beane had a challenge introducing analytics to complement the player selection process. Why? Because the scouts had been selecting players for a long time, and they had their own selection process, which, by the way, did not relate to this selection process at all. In the end, Beane prevailed. They started buying players based on their ability to win more. They had a significantly improved win rate, and the rest is history. The A's went on to become a very dominant team in the AL. So let's see what is the analogy to business development. Well, in business development, there are established business development capture processes. Most companies have these. Some are developed by the company themselves. Some take a commercially available product and then just tailor it to their company. But I would say if you looked at all the business development capture processes across the industry, there are a lot more similarities than there are differences. There are companies that are resource rich and resource poor. There are companies that have a win rate above their peers and companies that have a win rate below their peers. All right? Here's what we're seeing. Leading companies, the market leaders, are introducing analytics to complement their business development capture process. They're implementing analytics to get an objective view of what's going on. And what we are seeing is results of win rates significantly above their peers and achieving that at a lower cost. A lot of this, the thought process around this is really based on an outgrowth of a book by Davenport and Harris called Competing on Analytics. This is actually a really excellent book, and I'd encourage you to read it. It's very, very insightful and gives you a great idea of how people use analytics. A couple of data points from that book are 2.8 high-performing organizations are 2.8 times more likely to use analytics strategically, 4.5 times more likely to value insights than lower-performing organizations. The end result is that the companies that are using analytics have a dramatic competitive advantage over low-performing organizations. Well, let's take a look at who's using this. Actually, analytics have been around for a long time. Here I have a chart that has the industry sector, the companies that are in, some of the companies in that sector, and then how they are applying analytics. This is a modification of the chart by Davenport and Harris. So in the financial services area, Capital One is a leader in figuring out who should get credit cards. So they want to issue a credit card to the right customer, the one that gives them good profitability and the one that gives them a lower risk. In retail, we see this all the time. Amazon and Netflix are really good at demand forecasting and merchandising optimization. I mean, think about the last time you went to Amazon. You bought something, and then you get a little message that says, people who bought this are likely to buy the following item. And so they know exactly, they have a good idea of what your buying trends and buying habits are. Well, we talked about hospitality, a lot of applications relative to Marriott, a lot of others. But if we look at this chart, we kind of think about it for just a minute, and we would have to say to ourselves, hey, what's missing here? What's missing is federal business development. And what we're finding out is that only recently our analytics start to be widely used. When they're being widely used by these companies are maximizing their probability of win, maximizing resource efficiency, and maximizing their win rate. And we'll show you a couple of examples that illustrate what people are typically doing. But we're talking about 50% improvement here, not a few percent improvement. So let's look at an example. So let's think of a typical IT services company. And let's say that they had these results for a year. So in a year, they bid $500 million worth of business. They won $100 million. They had a win rate of 20%, and it cost them about $4 million. So historical data or statistical analysis is a level of analytics, and it is the lowest level of analytics. So these are the business results for a year. 20% win rate, and the good news is they get a win party. So 20% of the time, they get a win party. Now think about how this relates to forecasting, and we've all been through this. We come in and we say, well, we won 20% this year. If things remain the same, what's going to happen is we're going to bid $500 million, we're going to win 20%, and we're going to spend about $4 million. However, things do change. Things change because we have lessons learned, because we do process improvement, all right? And so if you bid $500 million, you might win 125, so you get a 5% increase in your win rate. This is an incremental increase in performance. It's important. The 5% is very important, but it is not a significant increase in the performance of the company. So let's look at how we can get to a significant increase. And that is in the optimization phase. So in analytics, lowest level of performance, highest level of performance. So a company would bid $500 million. Now we see a company at a win rate of about 36%, so they're going to win a lot more business. And in addition to that, we see that they're only going to spend about $3 million. So this is what we see happening on a scale in the federal business development area. And I've been fortunate enough to be involved in hundreds of these situations and see this type of performance. You go from 20% to 36% win rate, or if you start at 36, or if you start at 30%, you can go to 45% win rate. Dramatic improvement. The biggest improvement is in the win party. You get bigger, better, more frequent win parties, and people are a lot happier, and the morale just goes really high. So if we think about how do we move from a historical perspective to a market leader perspective, we think about today versus tomorrow. So today, when we have an opportunity and it gets discussed at the BD meeting, what happens? In determining what's bid, usually the best salesperson wins. The best salesperson is frequently the person who had the last winning proposal, because after all, who could be smarter than the person who had won the last proposal? So there's a big subjective component to this. Tomorrow, and what's happening with market leaders today, is it isn't the best salesperson that wins, it's the best opportunity that wins. So there's a focus on the opportunity and quantifying why that opportunity is the best one to go after. If we think about a little bit more, we have a little bit of a tendency in the industry to kind of drink your own bathwater. And what that means is you think by doing the same process over and over or slightly modifying that process over and over, that things will work better. Tomorrow, we're going to know what really works, why it works, and how well it does work. In doing proposals, frequently the costs get higher than the budget, right? And in the end, we just wind up setting budget equal to actual because we really don't manage them very well. Now, tomorrow, we will be able to decrease costs and improve our efficiencies significantly, and we'll know those before we get into the game. So today, we have a historical win rate. It's a result of a lot of subjective thinking. Tomorrow, we're going to have a significantly improved win rate, which will be a result of a lot of quantitative thought process. Recently, in the last few months, Washington Technology went out and talked to a number of leaders in the business development area and asked them what they saw as the key issues and key challenges that people should be considering in business development. And what I've done is I've just paraphrased and summarized what they said. First, emphasis on lowest price technically acceptable. We know this is a big challenge because it's hard to provide the customer the quality of work they want when you're going lowest price. I mean, it's just a real challenge, and you have to be able to perform. So you have to be able to figure out how to do that and still make money. Understanding the customer's needs. We all want to understand the customer's needs, and we want to understand it from their perspective. We want to address the competitive situation to see where we are and where we stand versus other people that are in the game. We find that, according to the information in the article, that there are a number of bids that are based on instinct and gut feelings. So that has a fairly high subjective component to it. We want to be able to develop the right solution in the context of what the customer thinks is right. We want to look at the resource availability, and we want to be able to manage uncertainty. So while we can identify with these challenges and we understand the challenges, the question is, how can we deal with them in an objective manner? How can we move from a market follower to a market leader? The basis of that can be obtained from looking at the book by Davenport and Harris, looking at the 4 levels of analytics. Lowest level, statistical analysis. What has happened? What has happened is you have a historical win rate. The historical win rate is whatever it is. You have a way to assess opportunities based on a historical thought process. Okay? In terms of forecasting and extrapolation, if the trends that are established here continue, what will be the results? Well, you'll get a pipeline ranking consistent with the historical win rate and this opportunity assessment approach. However, as we said earlier, things do change, and we'll make improvements because of lessons learned, and we'll make improvements because we'll have a better win rate. So we'll have some sort of incremental improvement here, and some sort of incremental improvement in our competitive assessment. If we get to the optimum level, here's what happens. What's the best thing that can happen to us from a BD perspective? We'll be able to maximize our win rate. We can go from something like 30 to 46 or 40 to 55. We can maximize the pipeline quality and resources, and we can quantify the effect of this, not just have to vote with our instincts and past performance. Over time, over about the last 15 years, we've had the opportunity to look at the things that affect, the questions that affect the management prop, tech prop, and cost prop. Now, we all know we have to submit the management prop, tech prop, and cost prop. The question is, what are the factors and what are the questions within those factors that will determine that these are winners in the eyes of the evaluator? Because all we care about is winning in the eyes of the evaluator. So based on tracking a large number of opportunities and tracking their just win-loss results, we've determined that there are 10 factors that influence winning. And let me just kind of go through those with you and give you an idea of some of the questions that are asked in each of those factors. And maybe there's something that you can add to what you're already using. So in terms of understanding the problem, How many key requirements can you identify? Can you justify that those requirements are key? Can you relate your understanding of the key requirements to your past performance and the evaluation criteria? Now, these are just a couple of questions that are in this section. Customer relationship. Have you briefed the customer on your approach to solving the problem? And what was the response? Did they agree, disagree, give you enhancements, or just listen to you and say thank you? How many relationships does your company have with decision makers? In other words, how well do you really know the customer? It's the difference between having a really good relationship with the customer and reading the RFP for the first time. Okay? Competitive landscape. How well do you know the award tendencies of the customer? Do you know from a management technical point of view who they typically award to? Have you performed a SWOT analysis? Do you know your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as it relates to this particular procurement? In terms of teaming, to what extent is your teaming decision based on a SWOT analysis? Are evaluation points gained by having a subcontractor, and can you demonstrate that those points are gained by having a subcontractor? From a management approach, because we're all going to write the management approach and the management prompt, how many contracts can you identify where your management approach has been successful? To what extent can you demonstrate that the resumes of the key personnel satisfy the evaluation criteria? In many cases, the key personnel are a big part of the evaluation criteria. So to what extent can you demonstrate that they satisfy the RFP requirements? In terms of the technical approach, how many technical differentiators can you identify and demonstrate that they are indeed differentiators? Has your technical approach been successful on similar programs, not other programs, but similar programs? So these 6 items are 6 factors that we have found to be very important as it relates to the management and tech prop. With the emphasis on lowest price technically acceptable and best value, we want to make sure we really have it covered relative to the cost approach. So we have 4 categories, 4 factors that relate to the cost. The first one is cost dynamics. A typical question in here is, what is your confidence level in understanding the customer's budget? Do you really understand the budget? Do you know how much they're going to hold back? Do you know how much you're going to spend? Do you know how much work has to be priced? All right. Is your cost substantiated by your basis of estimate? Okay. In terms of customer dynamics, why is the competition being held? You know, if they're happy with the incumbent, why would they rebid it? I mean, or they'll reissue the RFP. The odds of the incumbent winning are quite high. Do you know which contractors the customer considers to be front runners here? And if so, maybe we should go team with them. In terms of source selection, do you know the award tendencies of the customer? And you know, there are a number of agencies or people that have very specific award tendencies, and it's really helpful to know them. Do you know who's going to evaluate the proposal? And do you know how they feel about your company? In terms of your company dynamics, what is your history of winning against the competition? And have you completed a price to win? Well, these are the types of questions we found them to be very interesting. Let's look at how we would use those as it would relate to a particular example. So in this case, we have a particular opportunity. And the overall score for management technical is 64. Now remember we said we like green, yellow, red. So if you're in the green zone, you're in the winning zone. If you're in the red zone, you're in the losing zone. So from an overall management technical point of view, this is kind of in an interim phase. All right. We described very briefly the 6 factors in the previous chart. These are color-coded green, yellow, red. We have determined out of 100 points, so how many points should be allocated to each of these 6 factors. The way we did that was we used a minimum variant, an n-dimensional minimum variance estimation technique that determined the weighting of each of the factors and the weighting of the questions inside the factors. So there's a certain number of points that go with understanding the problem, and if you score high enough, you're green. The beauty of this approach is you know what you need to do to go to green. You need more work in customer relationship, teaming, management approach, and technical approach. And when you go through and answer the detailed questions, it becomes really pretty clear where you should spend your time and your energy. Well, that's the management technical approach. Let's now move to cost. So in the cost area, where we have the 4 factors, and here they are, we use the same process in terms of determining the weights out of 100 that should be used here. In this case, we have a score in the cost area of 76. That's the overall cost score, so that's in the green area. We find that when you're in cost, when you're green, and then management technical when you're green, we call green-green, then your probability of win tends to be north of 82%. Okay, so this is how we have evaluated a particular opportunity. It's all quantitative behind this. It's automated. Now let's look at how we could build a pipeline. And thinking about a pipeline, many companies have different ways of looking at a pipeline. We'll just show you one of them. Here's the opportunity. Here's the value of the opportunity. Here's the RFP date. And then we're going to show you the overall management technical score and the overall cost score, and then the data behind that. Okay? So this is the example we talked about before. This is a score of 64, management technical 76. So we evaluated that opportunity, but fortunately we have other opportunities to evaluate. So let's go evaluate another one. So this is an opportunity we put through the same process, and in this case you can see the score is not that particularly good. A low 14 management technical, 21 down here, and we'll talk about those ranges and what they mean shortly. So let's evaluate another one. In this case, notice that the management technical score was higher than the previous one, so it gets inserted above it. This pipeline is ranked by highest management technical. Okay, and we see here that we have, in the 53, we have some things that are good and some things that need improvement. Well, let's go ahead and fill out the whole pipeline. This is what a typical pipeline looks like for companies in our industry. So if they have 9 opportunities, and this is what it looks like at the bid, no bid decision point. All right, we'll talk more about how to use this as in time, but typically this is what happens. You have 3 opportunities that look pretty good. You have 6 that don't look very good. So if you're operating at a 30% win rate, you know you got a pretty good chance on these, and you're probably going to lose almost all of these. All right. So we can tell from this a couple things. Really nice score in management technical, scoring very well in each of these areas. Do a little more work in source selection. All right. A yellow score here, which says we need to spend more time with the customer, more time understanding the award tendencies. All right. When it comes down to the scores of 60 or below, invariably there's a trend. And the trend is very low score in understanding the problem, very low score in customer relationship from a management technical point of view, and in the cost area, very low score in cost dynamics and low scores in source selection. And so we begin to get a sense that we know what we need to do. If we had this pipeline, if this were a company's pipeline at the bid, no bid decision point, then these would have to be suspect in terms of pursuing. In all the opportunities I've looked at, when you're operating below 55 in this score, your probability of winning is single digits. You're just a few percent. Every now and then something in this category wins, but not very often. Okay? The beauty of this is you can now look at it, you know what to do. Let's look at how we might optimize our resources and our time. In this particular case, we have the opportunity, the value, the BNP, the RFP date, and then the assessor, management technical score, cost score. We've ordered this chart by RFP date. So these 3 opportunities are going to be released this year, and then the others are farther out. So the opportunity assessment can occur anywhere in the capture process. The beauty of this approach is it tells you very early on what you need to do in these categories to become more competitive. So now you can start to use this to deploy resources and to, more importantly, to address the actual issues that you need to deal with. So this is a resource optimization report, and you can sort by value, BNP, RFP date, and assessor. Okay. Real briefly, my only commercial of the day. This is Centurion's approach to analytics. We really are big supporters of green. We want people to be happy. We want to be in the winning zone. That's why we're here for you, our clients. This is a problem. We don't want to be here. Let's talk about how we get you from here to here, because that's where we all want to be. We utilize analytics to complement the business development capture process. These processes are important, they're effective, and they're ingrained. All we're saying is with analytics, you can take an objective, quantitative view of these processes and then take action to improve your win rate, because that's what we want you to do. We have identified the factors that influence winning. We have quantified the contribution of each of those factors. We have an extensive database of opportunities that have been evaluated with the associated win and loss outcome. We've used this database of opportunities with a win-loss outcome, and we utilize an n-dimensional statistical optimization technique. And that gives us the weighting between each of the different factors. In addition to that, we really like green, yellow, and red because it's easy to see, and because we always keep in mind we want to get you to green. In terms of our example that we looked at before, the question before us is really pretty straightforward. For a company, do we want to be a market follower or do we want to be a market leader? Analytics are now starting to be fairly widely used in this area, and we're going to see more people in this category. And more importantly, we're going to see more people at bigger win parties. In summary, analytics in business development is a game changer. We're not talking about changing the probability of win or the win rate by a few percent. We're talking about changing the win rate by 50%. Analytics is a game changer. The sooner analytics are adopted, the sooner you're going to start hitting more home runs, and the sooner we're all going to be happy. Well, thank you very much. I hope this discussion has been helpful and enlightening to you. Thank you for your time and attention. Feel free to contact any of the people here. A copy of today's slides is available at the web address we have here, and a recording of the session will be available tomorrow. Let me just remind you that our next webinar will be July 17th on business intelligence and research, how to find and use market data. I'm going to leave this slide up for the next few minutes, but I say good luck and happy hunting on your next opportunities. Thank you.
Doug, thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. I know everybody out there really enjoyed it as well. Also, for everybody, we have post-webinar discussion is at the LinkedIn website that's listed there as well. Doug, thank you once again, and thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks. Bye.